All righty, we are live. How's it going? Lee Hayward here with the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat for Friday, January the 12th. Hopefully you're having a good one. I'm having a good one, and I am excited because we're getting ready to launch another Lose Your Gut Challenge. So this getting tongue tied. This is the Lose Your Gut Challenge Fresh Start to 2024, and it is kicking off tomorrow over on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. So I know a lot of people have come on board. We have over 100 guys who've registered for the Lose Your Gut Challenge, and I am excited to be working with them and helping them to master the fundamentals of fitness and nutrition so they can not only lose their gut, but have a step-by-step action plan to sustain it and keep it off as a lifestyle. That's what this is all about. It's not just some short-term quick fix, suffer it out. It's about how to sustain a lasting fitness and fat loss transformation. And that's what we're going to be covering within the Lose Your Gut Challenge group. And that is kicking off tomorrow over on the Lose Your Gut Challenge Facebook page. And I can't wait to dive into it. All right. So I'll be sharing more about that. But of course, business as usual here today with our Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat. So let's see. Is this coming through loud and clear? Hopefully it is. Hopefully this is coming through and you can hear me and see me and all that. I always want to do a mic and video check. We got Robert joining in. Good afternoon. We have Dan joining in loud and clear. Thanks, Dan. I do appreciate that. Always just nice to confirm. Nice to confirm that it is coming through loud and clear before we get into any questions and topics of discussion and get into our content. Andy's saying it's coming through clear. Thank you, Andy. We have Richard joining in. Hello, how are you doing? Steven saying it is coming through loud and clear. Welcome, gentlemen. Glad to have you joining on to our video chat today. All right, so I will be discussing some things about the Lose Your Gut Challenge. And for those of you who are still sitting on the fence, this is a free challenge. It's a free virtual coaching program that's going to be taking place over the next week. So if you are interested in losing the gut and getting a sustainable action plan to help you move in the right direction, what have you got to lose other than the quote-unquote gut? If you want to come on board, you're more than welcome to join us. Again, you can head on over to my website at leehayward.com, and there's a blog post there that outlines what the Lose Your Gut Challenge is, how it works, and how you can register. So there's still some spots available if anyone wants to jump in at the last minute, because it doesn't officially kick off until tomorrow. Right? We've welcomed some people into the group already. I made the welcome post to our group, explaining what the challenge is, how it works, and all that, but it hasn't officially kicked off. So if you're sitting on the fence and you're saying, hey, should I do it? I don't know, maybe not. What the hell have you got to lose other than the gut? All right. So if you want to lose the gut, come on board. Again, a free virtual coaching program that you're welcome to attend. All right, let's see what we got here. A couple questions came through in advance that I want to address. One's from one of our regulars, Andrew, who always usually sends in a question of the week. So I'm going to cover that one as well. Another one that came through that I want to address is from a new person who sent it in advance. A second, I'm going to find that question. I have to pop it up here on my screen. Sent it through the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook page. This is from James. All right. I don't know if I can share James's question. In fact, I don't think I can because it's in a different window here, but I'll just read it out and we'll address it here. So James says that back in October, he fell and broke his pelvis in 4 places. Ouch. Says, now that I'm healed and I'm back to working, I've realized just how much strength I've lost, and I need someone who has the knowledge and knows about this type of stuff to help me in the gym and gain strength and muscle. And I was wondering if you had any tips that you could help or point me in the right direction. All right. Well, first off, James, I feel for you. I mean, that is a serious injury. Obviously, 4 breaks in your pelvis. You fell, broke your pelvis in 4 places, and now you're back to working again. This is going to be a challenge, right? Regardless of, who you work with. And what I would recommend first is obviously listening to your doctor's advice, listening to your physiotherapist's advice, as far as what you can and can't do mobility wise. And when you do start working out again, it's going to be very small, very basic, because you literally have to start building up from scratch, right? You got to start building that basic mobility in again. And I can kind of relate somewhat to what you're going through, because we're kind of going through a similar thing with my mother. Actually, she broke her hip just before Christmas. She broke her hip, so she's in the rehab phase with that. I mean, it is coming along and she's able to move around, but it's a slow process. Just physically moving is a challenge. So I mean, you're quite limited to what you can and can't do. And again, I don't know what your age and your mobility and your weight and your other circumstances are, or your past fitness background. So I mean, that's really going to have a big impact in what you can and can't do. But even if you have past experience with exercise and going to the gym and all that, you got to start back as a beginner, right? Like, even though up here intellectually you may know what to do and know what you were capable of doing back when you were healthy and fit and mobile, once you've had that injury and that setback, you got to start back as a beginner again. And that is a frustrating thing to do, but you have to go through that basics, just like a bare bones beginner, and literally start off with very light weights and go through the motions and focus on the consistency over the intensity. And this is so critical. The consistency is what's going to get you back in shape, not the intensity. Because if you go in there and push too much too soon, you could re-injure yourself or cause other injuries not related to the pelvis break. You could cause other injuries as well. And this is one of the biggest problems that I see when people are joining the gym, either coming back after a layoff or starting off new. They think they have to go, like, I got to go hard or go home, right? No pain, no gain. They think they have to do some extreme program. And a lot of times, like, people are hesitant to start. But when they do start, they're like, that's it, pedal to the metal, let's do this, right? And they're all full of piss and vinegar and gung-ho. And that's when very often injury and burnout happens, is in that initial phase. And we're right in the peak of it now. Like, this is the new year. The gyms are busier than ever. People, feeling fat and guilty after the holidays, say, that's it, I'm going to start off fresh in the new year. I'm going to make a change. And they join the gym and they say, I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to get in shape. Gosh darn it, I'm going to do it. And they end up doing, like, from zero to hero, right? Like, you've been puttering around doing nothing for months or years or however long it's been, right? For a long time, you've been stagnant. And then all of a sudden it's like, flat to the pedal to the metal. And you decide, okay, that's it. We're going all out. And you start working out every day, probably a couple hours a day, and you're starving yourself on some low carb, crazy diet, and thinking that the harder I work, the less I eat, and just burn that candle at both ends, that this is going to work. And yeah, you may be able to stick that out for a week or two, or who knows, depending on your willpower, maybe even a month or more. But eventually, you're going to hit your threshold of how much suffering and torture and pain and discomfort you can take. And then you're just going to say, you know what, screw it. It ain't worth it. And then in a moment of weakness, you're going to give in, right? You're going to say, screw the workout. I'm kicking back. I'm ordering a pizza. I'm getting myself a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? I'm going to sit back with whatever, Doritos and pizza and fried chicken and wash it down with a case of beer and say, the hell, the world can kiss my ass, right? I'm fed up with this. And then you just blow the diet. And then afterwards, what happens? You feel guilty because you blew the diet. And you're like, oh, man, I knew I couldn't do this. And then you're going to start beating yourself up because, I was working out so hard and I was starving myself and I ended up losing a few pounds because of that. Then I blew the diet and gained all the weight back again. And what happens? Now you're going to feel guilty and you're going to feel upset and you're going to want to feel good about yourself and comfort yourself. So you're going to go out and get more junk food because now you need the comfort food to soothe you for blowing the diet. And it just starts this negative spiral going downhill all over again. And that's what happens every year, right? So many people, like millions of people, are going to start their New Year's resolution fat loss goals. And of those people, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's less than 10% are actually going to follow through and achieve a fitness and fat loss transformation. 90+%, their fitness dreams are going to be like a fart in the wind, right? Here today, gone tomorrow. Whew, right? There they are. And then they'll be in the same position or even heavier next year, saying, and heavier and more frustrated, and then going to start that whole process all over again. So bottom line here, you have to start off at a manageable pace. Like walk before you run, right? That's the secret here. Like you have to take it slow, but consistent and progressive. And it doesn't matter how small you start, as long as you're consistent, and then you just make those little jumps, little baby jumps, week by week, month by month, let it compound over time. And I know it sounds so simple and so slow and painful and everything else, but that is the secret, right? If you can make, those little 1% improvements, right, day after day, and let those little 1% improvements compound, you'll be amazed at the progress you can make over the course of several months or even over the course of a year of that progressive overload type of training. But it takes the consistency. That's the most important thing. Consistency, hands down, right? If there's nothing else you take away from this, consistency over intensity. All right. So again, hopefully that helps kind of point you in the right direction there. And again, this one's dedicated to James, who shared this through the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook page. I mean, obviously, I know you don't live in my local area, but if you did, I would invite you to come to Omega Health and Fitness, where I train at, and we could probably even work together. I have some clients that I'm working with now through Omega Health and Fitness, doing some one-on-one coaching there. But if possible, I would recommend meeting up with a fitness coach in your local area who can take you through this, and preferably someone who's got a bit of experience under the belt and is used to dealing with injuries and has this type of mindset. Because a big problem with a lot of coaches and trainers is they think the more pain and suffering I can inflict on my personal training students, the better job I did. And that's not the way you want to look at it. Right? Your job is not to put people in pain. Your job is to help them get bigger and stronger over time. It's not to torture them and to suffer. But that's the way a lot of people view it. And even the average person thinks, well, if I leave the gym and I feel like I've been hit by a truck, then, I must have did a good workout. Not necessarily, right? There is a fine line to stimulating and not annihilating when it comes to muscle growth. So you need to have a smart approach about this and think of the long-term vision and not just where you want to be, next week, next month, in 3 months, or in whatever. Like, where do you want to be this time next year, or in 5 years, or 10 years? Like, you want to be able to be consistent in doing this as a lifestyle, not just some short-term, quick fix, suffer it out type of approach. And this is all things that we're going to be going into great detail within the Lose Your Gut Challenge. Like, I'm just kind of scratching the surface here, but we've got a full week of intensive coaching that we're going to peel back the layers of the onion and go really deep into this stuff within the Lose Your Gut Challenge group. All right, let's jump in. Let's see what else we got there. Got another question, and this is a good one, nutrition related, from, just switch this over. Just give me a moment here, gentlemen and ladies, whoever happens to be joining in. I know it's mostly guys watch my content, but we do have some ladies joining us as well. This one's from Andrew. All right. Andrew says, can you please answer a question for me tonight on your video chat? Yes, Andrew, I certainly can. He says, I just discovered I'm gluten intolerant. Whenever I eat wraps, bread, crackers, anything with wheat in it, I'm extremely bloated. I've stayed away from all gluten over the past week, and my stomach has never felt better. What carbohydrate sources would you recommend for someone to eat who is gluten intolerant? All right. That's a pretty simple one, actually, because gluten is wheat protein. So if you're not eating wheat, you're not eating gluten. And there's a lot of carbohydrate sources that are non-wheat carbohydrate sources, but they're the natural, unrefined, good carbohydrate sources, smart carbohydrate sources. We live in a world today where the majority of our diet are these processed wheat products, like breads and cakes and cookies and pastries and cereals and blah, 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 like all this kind of processed bread and bread-like, cereal-like substances. That's what a lot of our diet is. Like, you just think of the way most people, like, they wake up in the morning and they'll have coffee and a bagel, cereal and milk. For lunch, they'll probably have a sandwich, on bread, right? They'll have wraps. There's cakes and cookies and pastries. And, you go to the coffee shop, you get your coffee and your pastry of whatever sort. People are snacking on, crackers and cookies and things that a lot of it contains gluten, contains wheat products. So, like, we have this processed wheat-based diet, and that's where a lot of people have that's the root cause of a lot of health problems and a lot of obesity and a lot of excess empty calories. So what you need to focus on is those natural unprocessed foods, the good quality carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables, like the real foods, natural unprocessed foods. And then when it comes to the starchy complex carbs, there's a lot of options. You could have oatmeal, you could have rice, you could have potatoes or sweet potatoes or yams, like those tuber vegetables. Those are fantastic carbohydrate sources. But you just want to avoid the wheat products, like the pastas and the breads and the pastries and the stuff like that. Now, you can get the gluten-free alternatives, which are usually like made with rice flour or some other type of flour, not a wheat-based flour. The taste is kind of hit or miss on some of those, but those are options as well you can look into. But you really want to focus on just the natural unprocessed foods, right? That's what's going to be the game changer for you. Beans and legumes, another great source of good complex carbohydrates, slow releasing, sustainable energy to help curb your appetite, give you that long lasting energy. Those are great sources as well. But this is something, again, we're going to be diving into a whole deep dive into carbohydrates. Like, that's one of our video coaching lessons that we'll be covering within the Lose Your Gut Challenge. Like, every day there's going to be video coaching lessons, and we have a specific coaching lesson dedicated to smart carbohydrates and how to incorporate them into your diet so that you can burn body fat, maximize muscle growth, and feel good in the process, right? It's not about low carb, it's about smart carb, right? It's about making the right choices, and the timing of your carbohydrates can make a big impact as well, especially if you're focusing on strength and athletic performance. So we'll be going to doing a deep dive into this within the Lose Your Gut Challenge group. So feel free to join us over there for more information about this. But the tips I shared with you here are kind of going to scratch the surface and some things you can start taking away over the weekend. All right, let's see what else we have here. Lots of people joining in. Let's see. We have Jason is joining us. Welcome. We have Alex is joining us. Welcome, Alex. Glad to have you here. Matthew is joining us. He says, Lee Hayward, the OG YouTube fitness expert. Appreciate it, Matthew. Thanks for joining in. Yeah, I've been doing this for quite a while. I was actually just reviewing some of my YouTube stats there. And I started this back in 2006. Like, that's crazy. 2006. That's a long time. And that's YouTube. Like, I've been doing coaching online since the late 90s. That was before the days of YouTube. That was back when it was old-fashioned HTML websites. The good old days. We have Nick joining in. Welcome. That's Dead Fish Lord. I appreciate you joining in there. Thanks. All right, let's get into some questions. Let's see. Sean's got one. What are your favorite tricep exercises? I like push downs and overhead rope. Is that enough for optimal growth? Those are great exercises, but you want to have some heavy compound pressing moves. Bench presses, dips, push-ups. Those are great. You got to have some pressing in there as well. So it's not just the tricep extension. You want to get a good heavy press movement. And, just the regular bench presses that you would do for your chest, like a barbell bench press, a dumbbell bench press, and all the different variations, flat, incline, decline, they're all going to heavily work the triceps. If you really want to make it a tricep mass builder, then ideally do it with a closer grip, because that's going to take the shoulders and the chest out of the movement to a degree and place more of the emphasis on the triceps. Now, it's still going to work the chest, shoulders, triceps anytime you do a press, but when you go wider, there's more chest. When you go closer, there's a little less chest activation, a little bit more tricep activation there. And the triceps will go through a greater range of motion as well. So closer grip, close to medium grip. I'm going to actually move your question there for a second so I can show you. Don't make that common mistake where a lot of people have when they're doing close grip bench presses and their hands are way too freaking close, where it actually cocks your wrist in a weird way and you're trying to like have your hands together. Medium width, like shoulder width. That's a close grip bench press, shoulder width. Wider is a regular bench press for the chest. Shoulder width, that medium width, that's where you're going to maximize tricep stimulation. Any narrower than that, it's pointless, right? It's really going to place a lot of excess strain on the wrists, going to minimize the weight you can lift, and you're not going to get maximum muscle stimulation. So when I say a close grip, I'm really meaning a medium grip, like close as in shoulder width. That's as close as you should go for a close grip bench press. But include that in there. Other ones that you can do as well, you want to think, like anytime you want to maximize muscle stimulation, especially for hypertrophy, think of positions of flexion, working the muscles through all the ranges of motion. So you want a mid-range compound movement, which in this case would be the heavy bench press or close grip bench press. Then you'd want a fully stretched exercise. So an overhead rope extension, overhead dumbbell extension, skull crusher, lying tricep extensions. Those are all good stretch exercises for the triceps. Then you'd want some sort of peak contraction movement. Now, a pushdown can be considered a peak contraction exercise, but even things like dumbbell kickbacks, I know they kind of get a bad rap sometimes, but when you do all these exercises together, the mid-range, fully stretched, and peak contraction, that's an awesome combo for maximizing hypertrophy. And you will get a crazy pump if you do your exercises in that order, right? Mid-range, so that's the mass power building right there. Fully stretched, you really get the deep fibers of the muscles, and then you finish it off with a peak contraction, you'll get a crazy pump and burn. And that's probably one of the best ways to maximize hypertrophy. Right, so that's would be the additions I'd recommend in your tricep workout there. Let's see what else we have. TS joining in. So I feel like Mike Tyson / Ronnie Coleman after a hard set of free weight leg exercises like squats. Is that normal? Well, it's normal to be exhausted because free weight leg exercises, i.e. squats, are pretty much one of the hardest exercises you can do. It's like all exercises are hard depending on how hard you work them. But if you train squats to momentary muscular failure, that's freaking hard. Like if you do bicep curls to failure, yeah, you're going to get a burn in the muscles and everything else. But overall, it's not stressful on the central nervous system. Like you don't feel that deep fatigue or exhaustion. But when you rep out squats and you push it, yeah, that's max effort because there's so much muscle being involved. There's so much energy demands being created. You're moving so much weight. And of course, weight is relative, right? To your personal, I mean, if you're training hard, it's heavy for you, right? So don't think, hey, Joe Blow's squatting 400 pounds and I'm only squatting 200 pounds. I'm not lifting heavy. Heavy is relative to the individual, right? So, I mean, if you're training heavy for you, you're maximizing your muscle activation. You're putting a lot of stress on the body, the central nervous system, the muscular system, the cardiovascular system. Like it's a lot of work. So yeah, you will feel exhausted after a hard all-out set of exercises like that. That's pretty normal. And with those exercises, it's important to take extra rest periods. So like these are exercises. Do not rush squats. I would rather you take your time, take adequate rest so that you're recovering between sets and that you can actually exert full muscular effort and not fatiguing due to cardiovascular fatigue, which very often happens. If people are trying to rush it and have short rest breaks, I mean, there's a time and a place for that from a muscular endurance or conditioning point of view. You can do that. But if your goal is to maximize muscle stimulation, strength, and hypertrophy, then definitely take the rest breaks so you can handle maximum workload with those big exercises. And generally speaking, a good rule of thumb is the bigger, heavier the exercise, the longer the rest break you're going to need between those exercises. The smaller and the lighter, meaning your isolation work, and the smaller, easier exercises, lighter exercises, you can get away with less rest. Maybe a minute between sets would be plenty for small exercises, but you'll want 2 to 3 minutes between sets, between all-out leg exercises or all-out back exercises like deadlifts, squats, leg presses, things like that. Yeah, so that's pretty normal. Let's see what else we got there. Dayton is joining us. He says, with previous leg injuries over the years, why do you think about body weight only exercises for legs? Body weight squats, lunges, step ups, calf raises, all those things are great exercises. Absolutely. You can certainly incorporate them. But I'd also recommend some machine exercises as well, because working around injuries, machines are great for that because they keep you in a fixed range of motion. You can hit the muscles from multiple different angles. They're great. Like leg extensions and leg curls, leg presses, inner and outer thigh machine, the different calf raise machines at the gym. Like all these are great things to include. And you can usually include these exercises and safely train your legs without aggravating those injuries. And because with the machine exercises, you're in a fixed position, a fixed path. Whereas with free weights and even with body weight, you can move and wobble and lose your balance, so that there's more stability involved, which if you're healthy and you want to maximize stimulation, that stability factor is good. But from an injury rehab point of view, that is, if you're in a more balanced and secure position, there's less risk of falling out of the groove and aggravating those injuries even further. So I'm a big advocate of using machine exercises when appropriate, and injury rehab is a great place for that. But you could still certainly incorporate body weight exercises. And that applies regardless if you got an injury or not. Like body weight squats is still a great exercise for everyone. I still do them. Body weight lunges, a great exercise. Like whether that's a warm up or a finisher, even if you're an advanced lifter who can squat 300, 400, 500 pounds, like you can still do body weight exercises and get great benefit from it. Like body weights lunges, for example. Like if you're looking to finish off a leg workout, do several laps back and forth to the gym, lunging, really focusing on full range of motion, good control, going deep and really feeling those muscles work. I mean, it's an amazing way to finish off a leg workout and get that crazy pump and just more time under tension. So yeah, you can certainly incorporate body weight exercises, and you can even make it as advanced as you want. Like getting into different types of squat jumps, amazing for explosive power, and that's a body weight exercise. So you like incorporate some plyometric work in there for more advanced lifters. Now, for people overcoming injuries, you don't do plyometric exercises. That's just going to aggravate injuries. But I just want to share how body weight exercises are not like newbie beginner crap. Like a lot of people think, oh, that's too easy. Body weight is below me. Like, no, like body weight is freaking hard, freaking advanced. Like look at a gymnast or someone who's really good at calisthenics. Like there's nothing easy about what they're doing. I know one of my personal coaching students, Jeff Samatero, like over the last year, he's really been focusing on calisthenics. He actually signed up for a calisthenics specific gym, and they're doing a lot of body weight work, like on the gymnastics rings and stuff like that, and different handstand work and muscle ups on the rings and all these different body weight exercises. That's that's harder than what 99% of the people do in the gym. Right? So body weight doesn't mean it's for pussies and wimps. Like body weight can be freaking hard. All right, what else we got there? Let's see. Neil is joining us. Good morning, Lee. What are your strategies in training around an injury? A lot of people getting hurt these days. I have multiple questions already about injuries. So what are your strategies for training around injuries? Do you do unilateral stuff like one arm bench presses? Usually not. I like I mentioned before, I kind of already addressed this. Machine exercises are probably some of the best things you can do to work around injuries. And that's what I would generally recommend. Like whenever I've had injuries in the past, I've usually rehabbed those injuries with machine exercises and very lightweight machine exercises. Like I remember back several years ago, it's a long time ago now, when I tore a muscle in my lat, right? I mean, that still bothers me. Like I haven't been the same since. Like it's been a long-term injury, put it that way. Like it's recovered to the point where I can train and work around it, but I've never been as strong after that injury as I was prior to it. But I remember when I first had that injury, and I also torn both biceps, and when I was rehabbing from the bicep tears as well, I can remember going into the gym and just doing machine exercises with ridiculously lightweight. And like the gym that I was training at the time had a full line of hammer strength plate loaded machines, the unilaterals plate loaded, and the handles, depending on the setup and stuff, probably weigh like 10 to 15 pounds of resistance. And I would literally go into the gym and do hammer strength exercises with the empty handles. So I'd be doing chest presses with no weight, just going through the motion with the handles. I'd be doing lat pull downs with just the empty handles, and all the different variations, the rows and the all the different pull down and shoulder presses and bench presses and chest presses and whatever. I'd literally be going through motions with all those exercises with just the empty handles. That was my workout. And then when that felt good and I could do that without much pain or discomfort, then I put like a 2.5 pound plate on each side and go through the motions again with all those same exercises with 5 pounds of resistance. And then when that felt good, I go up to, I had another 2.5 pound plate, and you're literally just making those little 2.5 pounds per side, usually week after week after week. And that's how I built myself back up from those injuries. And yeah, it's a slow, painful process. Well, it's a slow process. It wasn't painful because I was working within my pain threshold, but it was a slow process, but it allowed me to build back up. And after several months, I was able to get back to my regular working weights with those exercises. But start off small and focus on the consistency, and just working the muscles, going through the full range of motion, pumping some blood in there. Like it wasn't a workout to stimulate growth. It was a workout to stimulate recovery. That's what it was. So anytime you're working around an injury, the last thing on your mind should be, oh, am I going to get bigger and stronger and all this? No, you want to just freaking get your mobility back into that injured area, right? You want to be able to train normally and to recover. Like once you're fully recovered, then you can focus on training for strength and hypertrophy or whatever it is. But like that's gone out the window when you're in the rehab phase, right? You don't not worry about that. And a big problem that I see when guys do have like a minor injury, like maybe they just pull a muscle, like it's not a serious tear or anything like that, but they tweak something, they train too hard, they probably use a bit of momentum, they cheat and heave the weight, and then, oh geez, I pulled something. I think I pulled my back, or I pulled my hamstring, or pulled my shoulder, chest, whatever. And then maybe they take it easy for a little while, maybe a week or so. But then they're feeling like, oh, I'm losing gains, right? Because I haven't been training hard for a week. And then they try to jump back too much too soon. And then they take that little minor injury, which was just a little pull, which if they had to ease their way back into it and took it smart, backed off their intensity, backed off their workload, they probably could have recovered from it with no problem. But because they feel that they're losing ground because they're not able to train as hard or as heavy, then they go back and they end up doing too much and take that minor injury and then turn it into a major one. And that's where very often I see a lot of serious injuries start off as a minor one that could have been prevented. But they did minor injury and they don't respect it enough to let the body heal itself and to back off accordingly. And they push too hard too soon, and they take that little minor pull and then turn it into a major injury, whether it's a muscle tear or tendon or ligament tear or whatever, something that's now it's a big setback, where it was only like a minor setback that probably only hold you up for a couple weeks. Now you could be set back for months, a year, or more. Who knows? All right. So, and in some cases, you may never fully recover. Like if you tear a pec or tear a bicep or something like that, like you'll never be the same afterwards. Like you can still recover and be to the point where you can train and work around it, but you're never going to be the same. And if you've ever known anybody or seen someone who's torn a pec, like it doesn't grow back. Like their chest is deformed for life, right? So, you have to, look at the big picture, right? Injury prevention is huge. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate of trying to be trying to do it with the best of your ability to remain injury free with your workouts. All right, let's see what else we got there. Sean says, Lee, if you had to guess how much you think you could bench now, I know your PR is 445, which is really impressive, but why do you think? I know you don't lift heavy anymore. I honestly have no idea. Again, this is a crapshoot. I'm telling you right now, for me to I don't think I'd even hit 300 pounds right now. No, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I haven't pushed that much. Like for me, 2 plates aside on the bench press, like that's freaking heavy at this stage of the game for me now. I mean, I'd be able to do it, and I have done it, but that's probably about as heavy as I'll go at this stage of the game, because it's not that big of it's not my main priority, put it that way, right? I mean, so for me, a heavy bench press workout now is like 2 plates aside. That's probably where I'm at now. Now, as far as a 1 rep max, I don't know, 275 or thereabouts probably. Again, this is just a crapshoot because I haven't tested it, and quite honestly, I have no desire to test it, because as I was just talking about, the risk of injury at this stage of the game is quite high, because I've got some weak links in the chain, from past injuries. Like I've got a muscle in my lat tricep area that's been torn, and that's still a weak link. I've torn both biceps. Those are weak links in the chain. Now they're strengthened to the point where I can go in the gym and train with submaximal weights for higher repetitions and higher volume, more time under tension, and stay fit and mobile and healthy. But if I start pushing max workload, what's going to give is the weak links in those chain. Like you always look at a chain. Like you could have a big strong link, like, okay, I can have a big strong chest, but if the tendons surrounding the biceps are weak, that could go. The tendons surrounding the tricep and the lat area, that could go again, right? So I don't want to stress the weak links in the chain with maximal effort, because certain body parts are probably strong enough to handle it, but then those weak links would be the first to go, and then I'd end up screwing myself over and setting myself back and being more frustrated and pissed off than ever. I mean, if I got to the point where I suffered some serious injuries and like I couldn't train and just had to, I'd be depressed. I really would, because I enjoy working out. Like that's a stress relief. It's fun. I enjoy it. I really look forward to it. So I respect my body and do whatever I can to stay injury free. Because I want to keep this going for a long time, right? I'm not just looking for how big and strong can I get, in the next few months. It's like, how big and strong can I stay, into my 50s, into my 60s, 70s, 80s, and hopefully beyond. Like that's where I'm looking at. Okay. A good concept that I've heard about recently, it's in Dr. Peter Attia's book, Outlive, and he talks about training for the Centurion Decathlon. And basically it's, what would you like to be able to do in your final decade of life? Like assuming you're going to live to be 100, Centurion, what would you like to be able to do in your final decade? Like, would you like to be able to be strong enough to carry your grandkids, to go out and take your dog for a walk, or, to bring in your own groceries, to do yard work and things like that, to go out and shovel the snow in your own driveway and all this kind of stuff. Like think of most elderly people that personally. I'm willing to bet that a lot of them are not doing jack shit other than sitting down watching TV, right? Like they probably can't go grocery shopping. They probably can't even walk up and down a flight of stairs. They probably can't, do anything physical anymore. They probably can't go out and mow their own lawn or take their dog for a walk or whatever. They're bedridden, couch ridden, they can get off the couch and walk to the kitchen, walk to the bathroom, walk to the bedroom, and do that multiple times. And then like that's life. Right. I know people personally who are in that situation, and it's sad. Like I don't want to be there. I would love to be, that old fella that you see at the gym, right? That old fella that you see who's at the park walking his dog all the time, or that old fella who's doing stuff, right? Like there's a few guys that I know personally, and it's freaking respectable. Like there's one guy I was coaching at the gym. He's 76 years old and he's in the gym. He's working out. He's lifting weights. He's doing cardio. I'm like, man, kudos to you, right? Man, if I had a hat, I'd tip it to you. I love it. That's what I want to be, right? So I'm thinking bigger, right? Not how strong can I be, in the short term. Like how strong do I want to be in the long term? That's my vision. That's what gets me excited. And I like that idea of training for the Centurion Decathlon. You can Google search it. Like there's tons of videos and stuff like that. But it's a great concept, especially for some of you who are, in the second half of life. If you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, something to certainly consider. All right, let's see what else we got there. Mega Muscle. Lee, do you give advice on TRT? Work with an online clinic, and they just shipped me testosterone and Deca, and they tell me to inject 400 milligrams and 200 milligrams weekly. All right, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a TRT specialist or whatever, but I'm just give you, my personal opinion. That's way too freaking high. That's basically steroid cycle doses. I mean, I know based on the bodybuilding world, like that would be considered a very low dose, but whatever. But from a TRT point of view, that is way freaking high. That's overkill, in my opinion. Now, again, I don't know the clinic and the doctor and everything else. Like maybe there's a reason for that, but you might want to get a second opinion on that one. Like I'll give you some real world numbers. Like I know friends and coaching students and people personally, and their TRT doses are usually less than 200 milligrams of testosterone a week. You probably like in the 150 milligram per week range. Now, again, that's going to vary from person to person, right? I don't want to just like give blanket numbers for everybody, but that is a more realistic number versus 400. Like 400 is like that's going to skyrocket your testosterone into the high levels. And when it's too high, that's where the side effects come from, right? Yes, okay, from a strength and athletic point of view, yeah, there's potential benefits. I mean, I look at, performance enhancing drugs and athletes in all sports, not just bodybuilding, but in all sports. You see, the performance benefits, but then there's also the side effects, and it can cause elevated blood pressure, elevated red blood cells. And like a lot of times when people are working with a doctor with this or a hormone replacement clinic and stuff, they're getting their blood work done constantly, and they're constantly monitoring the amounts and the dosages so that it doesn't get too high, right? Because when it's too high, there's all kinds of implications that come about. And very often, sometimes they have to actually go do a blood dump because the red blood cell count is getting too high. It's actually getting dangerous where it could cause heart issues and clot and stuff like that. We don't want that, right? You want to keep it in a reasonable, healthy range, right? There is such a thing as too much of a, you don't want too much of a good thing, right? So again, ask your doctor about that, right? Just tell them your concern. Say like, I was talking to some people and they said that's a bit high on the HRT dosage range. Are you sure? And the Deca thing, that's one, like most hormone replacement clinics usually would not prescribe Deca. It's usually testosterone and growth hormone, maybe some HCG, things like that, maybe some anti-estrogens if needed. But Deca is kind of getting into the bodybuilding realm, right? Now, again, it is a prescription medication, there is a time and a place for it, but you usually don't hear about it very often. At least I haven't, with people that I know personally who are doing hormone replacement therapy. It's testosterone is usually the main one. They're not getting into the auxiliaries, like Deca. So again, get a second opinion. That's my advice. I can't really offer any more than that because I'm not a doctor. I'm just shooting my opinion, and take that for what it's worth. We have Michael Martin saying, Lee, wondering how you feel about 2 pressing days per week for increasing bench and shoulder strength. You can certainly do a couple pressing days or even more. It really depends on the total volume for the week and how you're recovering from it. I personally do 3 total body workouts a week, and I usually do a pressing exercise with each workout. So technically, I'm doing 3 pressing days a week, but it's not like I'm going in there and doing 20 sets of chest, 3 times a week. Like I'm probably doing maybe 20 sets total over the course of the week, broken out over the course of my 3 workouts. But it really comes down to the overall volume for the week. But yeah, you can do more frequency, and a lot of times for strength, shorter, more frequent workouts can often be more beneficial because you're stimulating the muscle and then giving it a chance to rest, recover, and grow, and then get back in there, stimulate it again, rest, recover, grow. And the more frequent you do it, the more you're ingraining those movement patterns in there as well. So there's not just the pure strength side of growth, but there's the repetition, getting good at that movement pattern and ingraining the motor units, and just the skill of being able to recruit the muscle fibers and to handle that exercise with proper technique. So this is something like in the early phases of training, a lot of people talk about the newbie gains, how they make such rapid gains when they first start training. It's not all due to pure muscle gains. A lot of it is due to technique gains and being able to recruit the fibers and the muscles and activate those muscles that are needed for a specific exercise. So a lot of the strength actually comes from improved technique. The more coordinated you get, the more you're able to activate and stabilize and balance and support yourself. That's actually going to be a good chunk of your strength gains early on. But the more frequent you train, the better you're going to get at it. And that applies with anything. Like think of any skill you want to get good at. Like let's say you want to play a musical instrument. The more frequently you play it, the better you're going to get because you're ingraining those skills. Like if you want to play the guitar, you got to be picking up your guitar every day and practicing because you want to get good at it. Or anything that you want to get good at. You got to do it repetitively to have that skill. Same when it comes to your exercises. You want to do those exercises repeatedly so you're building the skill and also strengthening the muscles. Prime example of one of the programs I had back in the day, the Blast Your Bench program, which is still available. You can head over to blastyourbench.com. That incorporated 5 bench press days per week. Now, they were very short, and like it was 5 sets per each day, and we varied the sets and the reps. So it wasn't like going balls to the wall, heavy 5 days in a row. Like one day would be a heavy day, next day would be a high repetition day, next day would be another like maybe a pyramid day where you pyramid it up to a top heavy set, and then another high repetition day. Then the other one might be like multiple sets of low reps. So we varied the volume and the intensity, but the frequency was there, right? So you're repeatedly doing that exercise. And a lot of the strength gains not only came from the muscle strength, but just doing that exercise over and over and over again, you got really damn good at it. And by the time you finish the cycle, like you plop down on the bench and man, you're pounding out the bench press with textbook perfect form because your body is so conditioned and you're repeating that movement pattern over and over again. So you really get good at it. So yeah, get back to your question. You can certainly do more frequent workouts, and that's a great way to increase your strength. Right? I would think it's even better than the old school hitting each muscle group once a week type thing. Like obviously that did work and it still can work, but I think you'd be better off twice a week or more for each muscle group. Does getting old scare you? That's from Sean. It doesn't scare me, but I view it as a challenge. I view it as that. Like it's obviously we have to accept reality. Like the older you get, it's downhill from here. Like we're never going to be as young as we are now, and unless you're in the early phases, like in your teens or you're in your early 20s or something, and you're still on your climb to your prime, once you're 40 plus or even late 30s plus, like your fitness and athletic performance starts to, you're starting to get over the hill, right? So you're starting to go downhill from here. Now, it doesn't mean that that's necessarily a bad thing, but you got to face reality. Like, I know I'm not going to be as strong as I once was. I know I'm not going to be as big and as muscular as I once was, but I can focus on other areas of fitness. And I was actually, I watched a YouTube video today that was talking about endurance. And ironically, a lot of older athletes hit their peak when it comes to endurance later, like 40s plus. And a lot of it is because multiple things are happening. And one of it is mental toughness, experience, and also the body just changes its the way we utilize fuel and its efficiency. So even though you can't generate maximum force and maximum power output and explosiveness like you can when you're younger, you can keep going like a diesel engine, right? And just keep chugging along. So even though the peak isn't as high, you probably sustain the effort for a lot longer. And there were the video I was watching was talking about this, like how a lot of times older endurance athletes can outlast younger folks. Like the younger guys will start off, fast out of the gate, but then it's just like the tortoise and the hare, right? The old fella's like the tortoise, and he just keeps going. And sure enough, when the hare is exhausted because he went so fast out of the gate and burned himself out, the old fella can keep chugging along. And that actually parallels quite nicely with my recent training and experience, because I've gotten more into the sport of cycling in recent years. And my endurance and stamina is better than it's ever been. Like, I've never had this level of endurance and stamina when I was in my 20s or 30s as I do now in my 40s. So obviously I'm training for it, but it's just interesting that it's something that I can actually train and get good at and see progress in. So that actually excites me. And I have some, bigger goals. And hopefully this year I'm going to hit some more personal bests in the endurance realm, right? Like, to put some perspective there, last year in 2023, I cycled over 13,700 kilometers, right, on my bicycle. I literally rode my bicycle further than I drove my car in 2023. I've got more miles racked up on bicycle than I do on my car. So, like, when I was younger, there's no way I have the stamina to do that, because I didn't train for it and everything else, but I've just built up the ability to do that. And that's exciting. So does getting old scare me? Not really. I'm just changed my focus, my perspective, and I'm excited for new things about getting old. Right? As I mentioned, I know I'm not going to be as big and as strong and all that as I was when I was younger, but I can be better in other ways. What else? Jason is joining us. That was a big one. Having a sparkling water, in case you're wondering what I'm drinking. This is not beer. This is not soda. It's a 0-calorie sparkling water. All right, let's see what Jason has. I see guys all the time when training for hypertrophy. As soon as they finish training, they immediately use mass gainers or sweets to reduce catabolism, more or less the anabolic gate. I've heard it referred to as the anabolic window. Theory, is this definitely effective or necessary if it is known that the post-training meal will be complete with nutrients? All right. This idea, the whole post-workout anabolic window, or as you're referring to, anabolic gate. I've never heard the term gate, but I've heard window. This was really... All right, I'm going to try and back up here. There is some science and reasoning behind it, but it's not as big a deal as a lot of people make it out to be, and certainly not as big a deal as the supplement companies made it out to be. This is really a supplement marketing ploy, especially with a lot of the different supplements that are used as the post-workout recovery supplements. Like, the big thing was, you got to have a combination of fast digesting carbohydrates and fast digesting protein, and you got to get that in you. A lot of times they'd actually combine it with creatine. So, like, when creatine first hit the market, they were having, okay, so you have your fast absorbing sugars, your fast absorbing protein, and your amino acids, and your creatine and all this, and you got to gulp that thing down within 33 seconds after your last rep of your last set, or the whole workout was a waste. Like they try to make it some ridiculous rule where you, as if there was these timelines, like, you're on the clock, tick, 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 and if you don't get it in you within a specific period of time, your whole workout was like a fart in the wind, gone. You're not going to build any muscle from it. That's not true. Your workout is still effective regardless of your post-workout nutrition. Right? If you had no post-workout nutrition whatsoever, but you consistently worked out, on a regular basis, you're still going to get bigger and stronger and make progress. But you could help to optimize the recovery phase with proper nutrition, right? So, there is some science and reasoning behind this, but where this really makes the most difference is for people who are training frequently. And I'll use the analogy of let me give you an example first. I'm getting ahead of myself here. If you look at a high performance athlete, let's say we have a football player, right, who does a weight training workout in the morning, and then he has a football practice in the afternoons. So he's doing twice a day workouts, strength training and practice, and he needs to be able to function and fuel. So like he does his weight training workout in the morning. He wants to get fast absorbing nutrients into his system as fast as possible so that he can be recovered and function for that practice in the afternoon. Now, the average Joe who's working out, say, 3 days a week, you're not on such a strict time schedule. Like, does it matter if you recover as fast as possible if your workout is not till 48 hours later? Like, just the regular food and meals that you eat throughout the day is going to be adequate enough to replenish your glycogen stores and provide, adequate protein for protein synthesis and all that, just by eating your regular meals throughout the day. Like, you don't need to have this rapid absorbing post-workout nutrition if you're just working out every other day. So look, that's where this comes into play. And the analogy I like to use is, let's visualize race cars and your daily driver car. You're just your normal day-to-day sedan that you use for going back to work and going to the grocery store and checking the mail and whatever else. Compare that to a NASCAR or a Formula One car. Like, you see these cars, NASCAR, Formula One, stuff like that. They're out on the racetrack and they're pushing the limits. Their goal is to go as fast as possible and place as high as possible, in the race. So when they come into pit lane, everything has to be fast. Like, they got a pit crew who has high-speed fuel pumps to pump fuel into that car as fast as possible. They got guys there ready to change the tires in the matter of seconds. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, watch some videos if you've never seen this before. Formula One tire change. Like, literally in less than 3 seconds, they got 4 tires changed. Like, less than a second a tire, or like 3 seconds, you got 4 tires off, 4 new tires on, boom, they're ready to go. Right? 1, 2, 3. So it's insane how fast and efficient this is. And again, high-speed fuel pumps are just blasting fuel into the tank as fast as possible so that they can get that car out of pit lane and back on the track as fast as humanly possible, because every second they waste in pit lane is time they're losing on the track, and that could cost them the race. Visualize that when you go to the gas station to fill up your car. Does it matter if it takes you 3 seconds to fill up your car, or if it takes you 3 minutes, or heck, if it even took you 10 minutes? In the greater scheme of things, does it matter? Probably not, because you're probably not that pressed for time. You can go pump up your car and however long it takes, and then you can go in and pay for your gas and dilly-dally around and get back in the car and get back into rush hour traffic again. Like, it's a big deal, right? You're probably going to get everything done, whether it took you, 30 seconds to gas up your car, if it took you 3 minutes or 10 minutes. Like, it's probably not going to make a big deal. Same thing when it comes to changing your tires. Like, do you need to change your tires in 3 seconds, or can take, an hour? Big deal. For most people, you're not that crunched for time. You can still function and get through life as fine in a normal situation. So the same applies when it comes to nutrition. For the average person, you don't need to force and have these rapid absorbing nutrients, right around that post-workout window. Just your regular meals will be adequate to fuel and recover. All right. But for high performance athletes, or in the analogy of the race car, high performance race car drivers, they need every little edge they can, because that could be the difference between winning and losing. But for the average driver or the average gym goer or whatever, it doesn't make a difference. It really doesn't. Like, high octane race fuel isn't going to make you get through race or rush hour traffic any faster, but it'll help you get around a racetrack faster. Right? So you got to look at the context. And that's why some of this stuff, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It depends on who's the message for, right? If I'm giving nutrition advice to a high-level athlete who wants to maximize every bit of progress and they're pushing their body to the absolute limit, yes, all these different, pre-workout, intra-workout, post-workout, all these different nutrition strategies, meal timing and nutrient timing, it makes a difference at that level. But for the average Joe who goes to the gym 3 days a week, it's not a big deal. It's really not. Like, as long as you're consistent and you're good enough, but good enough consistently, you can still reap the results that you want to reap. All right. So that's why you have to really dissect it and look at it. And the people you see are probably following advice that are given to athletes and bodybuilders, because again, they're wannabe athletes and wannabe bodybuilders. Like, when I was younger, I fell for all that crap. Right? I'd be in the gym locker room mixing up my shakes right there and then, and figuring if I didn't get it gulped down within the matter of seconds after my last rep of my last set, then the whole workout was going to be a waste. And I'm going to go catabolic, and my anabolic window is closing. Oh shit, I got to get this in me. And man, it really doesn't matter. It's not that precise a science as people try to make it out to be. Right? But anyway, good question, Jason. Right. Brad saying, a beautiful breakdown, Lee. Thank you. I'm glad you appreciate it. Who else we got there? Frank is joining us. He says, I'm on a cut right now, and while I typically train each muscle group every 4 to 5 days, I've heard that you should train every muscle more frequently, specifically while cutting to prevent muscle loss. I kind of discussed this earlier. Someone was asking about frequency in strength training. How often you train each muscle, it varies depending on the type of program you're following, your level of experience, how much volume you're doing. And what I would focus on more than like, hey, should I do it twice a week or every 4 days or whatever? Think of the total volume for the week, right? And how you space that out. Like, let's just, to keep the numbers simple, let's say you were doing 30 sets per body part. Like, that would be a high volume, old school Arnold type of workout, right? 30 sets per body part, train 4 or 5 hours a day, right? Blah, blah, blah. Like Arnold used to say back in the day. You could train each muscle group, right, for 30 sets once a week. Or you could break that up and say you do 15 sets twice a week. Or you could break that up and do 10 sets 3 times a week. Now, that's still on the high side. I'd probably slash those sets down lower. But for the sake of our example, we'll go with this, right? It's the same total volume for the week, but how are you breaking it up? I personally like to do shorter, more frequent workouts. That's what I find works the best for me. And when I look back over my training over the years, I've made progress with all the different splits, like the old school bro splits, and then the push-pull leg splits, and the upper-lower splits, and the total body. Like, they all work. As long as you're consistent and train in a progressive fashion, it all works. But I think you can get better results for your effort with a shorter, more frequent workout than going in there and just annihilating that muscle infrequently, like hitting that muscle once a week, or in your case, once every 5 days or whatever. I think you could probably break it up and increase the frequency a bit. Twice a week would be a good ballpark, I think, for most body parts. And another thing you got to look at too is not all body parts need the same training stimulation, because after you've been training for a while, you may find that certain muscle groups respond faster than others. So let's just say your arms respond really good, but your legs are lagging behind. Maybe you want to decrease the frequency of the arm training and increase the frequency of the leg training, or vice versa, whatever that body part happens to be for you. Like in my case, chest and back responds well. Legs tend to respond well. Like my torso and legs respond well, but my limbs, my arms and shoulders always lag behind. So when I do a prioritization or specialization phase, I would probably only train chest, back, and legs once a week, but then I'd hit arms and shoulders twice a week or more in some cases, because I wanted to prioritize those stubborn areas. So you can look at your own physique and say, like, what are your strong areas and what are your weak areas? What do you want to prioritize? And you can train the stubborn, weaker areas more frequently so that they get more muscle stimulation, and then take your stronger body parts and put them on a maintenance phase. Maybe only hit them once a week, right? So you're dedicating more of your energy, more of your recovery towards those stubborn areas to help balance it out. So again, there's a lot of, every time there's a question here, there's so many things to unpack, and it varies from person to person and situation to situation. And that's why I don't like to give, cookie cutter one size advice. Like everybody should train every muscle group twice a week with 12 sets per muscle group. Boom. Right. That's my one pill for every ill. Right. No, it doesn't work that way. It depends on the individual, their situation, and a whole slew of things. Like that's why having a real person, a real coach to guide you is so powerful versus just taking some cookie cutter program and thinking that applies to everybody. Because it doesn't. I mean, it may apply to some, and it may be ideal for a certain person, certain situation, but it could be the complete opposite for somebody else in a different situation. All right, we're going to get ready to clear this up shortly, but I'm going to answer a couple more before we do. How did you tear your biceps and lat? The bicep tears, one was an in the gym tear. I was trying to flip a 600-pound tractor tire at a strongman gym and tore my bicep. That was my left one. The other one was a surfing accident. That was a freak of nature, literally. I can't surf worth a shit, but I was doing surfing lessons while on vacation in Mexico, and paddling out to catch the wave. I was on my board, trying to get out and going over the waves and stuff like that. Anyway, a bigger than expected wave came in, and it flipped me over when I was paddling to get out. And I got caught up and swept in the wave. And I held on to the surfboard because I was like, oh, when the wave came, and I tensed up. And then when the wave went over, it grabbed the surfboard, and just the force of the water jerked. And I was holding on tense. And as it jerked, it literally popped my right bicep and tore it. Luckily, it was just muscle fiber tears. So the right bicep actually healed up normally. But the left one that I tore trying to flip the tractor tire, that was a tendon tear. So my left bicep is shorter than the right now, and it'll always be shorter because it was actually tendon damage there. The lat, that was a weird one. That actually happened with squats. Ironically, I was doing a set of squats, or I was doing a 5x5 squat program, and literally on my fifth set, fifth rep, I was straining and struggling. As I was coming up out of the squat, I just felt rip, and I had so much tension with the barbell across my back, and then just rip. I'm like, what the hell just happened? I managed to rack the weight on my own, and I said, that was the weirdest sensation ever. And I reached and felt my armpit, and there was a gap there. And I guess just the sheer strain and tension of having that barbell across my back, it just caused the muscles to just pop right under the tricep lat tie-in area right there in my armpit. And I still, to this day, have a gap there. And that was back in 2008. And there's still an empty gap where that muscle was torn. But that's how I had those. Those were my two major injuries. Well, three, if you will. 2 torn biceps and 1 torn lat. And the rest were usually just nagging aches and pains and injuries that thankfully healed up on their own. Let's see what else we got there. One more. Do you think it's better to train with more intensity and less volume to put less wear and tear on the joints? Not necessarily. Volume is not the same as intensity. I would actually probably switch it around. But there's a fine line here, right? But when you lift with really heavy weight and you're gritting and straining, that's putting more stress on the joints, tendons, and ligaments. Whereas lower intensity and higher volume, the body is meant for that. Like I use an analogy, like if you do a super heavy set of squats, that could be really hard on your knees. But if you go and do a 5-mile walk, your knees will probably be fine. The volume, the time under tension of that walking is a lot more than the time under tension of that heavy set of squats, but it's less stressful on the joints. So no, I don't think that more intensity and less volume is easier on the joints. I would actually have it the other way around. But then there is a point of diminishing returns as well, because then you get people who do extreme amounts of cardio, for example, like high marathon runners, and they get knee problems and stuff like that because they're doing such excessive amounts of volume. But within moderation, within reasonable levels, I think if you've got joint pain, err on the higher volume, and the lower intensity or the lower weight would probably be better to work around that joint pain, because then you're able to focus on working the muscles and contracting the muscles, and not just simply trying to support the weight with the joints. Because you've probably even noticed this yourself. Like if you do a really heavy set of anything, like a heavy set of bench presses, right? You're feeling your elbows and your shoulders and all the joints, they're just locked up and they're so tense, just trying to support that weight that's probably too heavy. And even as you're going through the movement, like you can't relax, or you can't actually fully activate the muscles because everything is just so tense under that weight. Or when you got a really heavy squat on your back, like you probably can't go as deep because your body just tenses up. So it's like all the joints, tendons, ligaments, everything is so tense. Whereas if you had a lighter weight, one that you could comfortably manage, you could probably do better form and actually work the muscles with more time under tension, better form, better mind-muscle connection. So, there's a fine line there when it comes to the weight versus the volume and stuff. So, I would recommend starting off light and then building it up slowly and gradually in a progressive fashion, but then being aware of when you start to cross that threshold of, what, I'm going a little too heavy now. My form is starting to break down. I'm feeling it more in the joints, tendons, and ligaments, not getting the same mind-muscle connection. Maybe I better just scale it back a little bit, tighten up the form, and then gradually build it up again, right? We kind of refer to this as like a reset. And a lot of my personal coaching students, they do this all the time. Like they're training in a progressive overload fashion. They're constantly trying to get bigger and stronger in their exercises. But it comes a point of diminishing returns where you're kind of heaving and cheating and you're just moving the weight for the sake of moving the weight, but you're not actually getting that mind-muscle connection with it anymore. Once that happens, and you have to have that good sensory acuity with your body to know when that's happening. Then you say, let's just dial it back. Even if we scale back the weight 10 or 20% and then build it back up again. And I find in that reset phase, you can actually help to spur on new muscle growth, because now you're actually lightening up the weight, you're working the muscles, getting a better muscle contraction, probably able to increase the volume, the reps, and the quality of those reps, and then gradually build it back up to the point where you were before, and then even surpass it. So sometimes it's almost like, you gotta take one step back before you can take 2 steps forward. And that's the way we very often go about it with our training. Let's see what else we got there. Jesus, there's a lot of questions coming through here. Michael saying, thanks for your response, Lee. Actually started out on your programs 10 years ago. Awesome. Good for you. I appreciate you for sharing that, and appreciate the support over the years. Thanks for sharing. Brian saying, is there such a thing as overtraining? Yes, there is. Most people usually don't get to it. Like a lot of there is such a thing as overtraining, but it's not as easy or as some people try to make it out to be. Like if you ever watched any of the old Mike Mentzer videos where like everybody's overtraining, if you work out more than 1 day a week, you're overtraining, or if you do 2 sets, you're overtraining. Like, no, it's not that easy to overtrain, but there is such a thing as overtraining. Right? Usually what happens is people are under-rested and undernourished, and that's what leads to overtraining. If you're getting adequate rest, meaning like adequate sleep, and you're getting adequate nourishment, it's amazing the volume that your body can sustain, and you know, the frequency, and what you can build up to gradually and progressively over time. Like, I wouldn't expect someone who's never worked out before to be able to jump into like a 2 hour a day, 6 day a week program, but someone who's more advanced could certainly handle that. Right? That's quite common. You know, as long as they're well rested and they're well nourished. Right? And then when you get into the endurance world, it's mind boggling what the body can handle and build up to. But there is, of course, that point of diminishing return where you're just doing too much for the body to recover from. And then you may need to go through a deload phase, you know, an active recovery phase to kind of reset things. But there is such a thing as overtraining, absolutely. Right? But usually what happens is most people will get to what we refer to as overreaching, where like you're knocking on the door of overtraining. You're starting to feel like the symptoms, like I'm just feeling exhausted. I don't have the same strength and energy today. And then if you back off a little bit, let your body rest and recover, within a few days, you'll be back to normal and be able to give it 100% again. That's not really true overtraining. True overtraining is when you are chronically fatigued for a long period of time, and then it gets to the point where like you need to take some serious time off in order to let everything reset, because you're just burning your body out. You're literally burning the candle at both ends, stressing your central nervous system, and it's just a prolonged thing, right? You know, but most people usually don't get to that stage unless you're like an extreme competitive athlete and you're pushing your body to the extreme. Like, I give you an example, a prime example of true overtraining. Like, think of like the Navy SEALs when they go through Hell Week. Have you ever read or listened to any of David Goggins' stories about Hell Week and some of the crap that they do? You know, where they're pushing their bodies to the extreme. They're sleep deprived, they're food deprived, they're everything deprived, but they're pushing their body pedal to the metal with intensity. Yeah, that's overtraining, right? But most people don't go anywhere near that kind of level of activity and under resting to put themselves in that state. All right, one more question, then we're going to clue it up. And this is an interesting one, and I want to address it. It's from Sean. Can your body repair itself after smoking and drinking for a couple years? That's a good question, and I'm sure a lot of people can probably relate to that, you know, especially the drinking one, because drinking is more socially acceptable than smoking these days. Like both are very bad for your health. Like, there is zero health benefits to smoking or drinking, right? Regardless of what crap you've heard. Like, even the old school stuff where people say, oh, you know, red wine in moderation is good for your health. No, it's not. That's a correlation, not a causation, right? Like, there is no safe amount of alcohol. Like, I would never recommend someone who is a non-drinker to start picking up moderate drinking for the health benefits of it. Like, if you're a non-drinker, stay a non-drinker. That's the healthiest way to be, right? Your doctor would never say, you know what, you should start drinking because it's healthy for you. No, right? But getting back to Sean's question here, can your body repair itself after that? It can, provided you have the lifestyle and that to let your body repair itself. And it's going to take time. And how long it takes and whether the damage is reversible really depends on a lot of factors, like how much damage was caused, right? If it was a young person who just went through a phase in college where they were binge drinking on the weekends and did it for a few years, but otherwise were relatively healthy, and then they stopped. Yeah, you're young. It was a short-term thing. Most likely you could totally repair that, with a period of time after of living a healthy lifestyle. But if you have someone who's drank and smoked their whole life, like I use an example of, I have an uncle who's 70 years old. I think he's 70 or 71. Anyway, he's in his 70s, put it that way. Smoked ever since he was a kid, right? Like, as soon as he was, I don't know, 10 years old, he was smoking cigarettes. So he's got 60 years of smoking and pretty much the same amount of time drinking. And quite frequently, like not a health, like no focus on diet or exercise, smoked and drank his whole life. Had a scare a few months ago where short of breath, couldn't breathe, he was actually, walking, and he had to sit down, and body just wasn't functioning right. And he got a scare, right? So like, it scared him enough that he cold turkey quit smoking, right? And if you have your brush with death, right, you have your scare where you think this is it, it's amazing what people can do once they, you have that brush with death. Sometimes we had to hit rock bottom before we see the light. Too bad this couldn't have happened to him 40 years ago. But anyway, it happened to him just a few months ago. So he quit smoking cold turkey. And, can he reverse the damage of 60 years of smoking? Honestly, I don't think so. I mean, he can prevent further damage by not continuing to smoke, but is the damage irreversible? At this stage of the game, I would say absolutely, yeah. I mean, there may be a slight regression as he transitions from 70s to 80s if he lives that long, but the damage is done. Like, he's never going to have perfect healthy lung function or perfect healthy liver function or all this, because I mean, decades upon decades of smoking and drinking has just left a scar that is not going to be curable. But if for a young person who did it for a while, I think the damage can be reversed. And this is what I've heard. Now, this is not a scientific reference or nothing, but I've heard people say that it generally takes as long being a non-smoker or non-drinker to undo the damage as it did the time you were smoking and drinking. So, for example, let's say you smoked for 5 years. It'll probably take you 5 years to get back to being your pre-smoking health, if you will. Like, to undo the damage, it takes about as long being a non-smoker or non-drinker as you were a smoker or a drinker. Now, again, this is not some scientifically proven thing. It's just a correlation or a general guideline that I've heard several people mention. And I think there's probably some truth to that. So if you smoke for 10 years and you quit for 10 years, at the end of that second 10 year of non-smoking, you probably undid most of the damage and you're probably good to go. So you have to look at it. How long was this done? And do you actually have enough time to truly reverse the damage to get back on track? Now, regardless of the time, I think improvement is always possible. So, like, even in my uncle's case, who has 60 years of smoking under his belt, the fact that he quit now, I mean, who knows? That might extend his life a bit, or at least minimize further damage down the road. Right. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a waste, or I'm not encouraging him to continue with these non-smoking habits, right? Keep going. But, you have to face reality as well, right? Like, sometimes the damage is done, right? And you're not going to fix it, right? So you got right? Kudos to him for trying, but it's a little too little, too late type of thing. Anyway, I'm going to get ready and clue this up, guys. I know there's a lot of other questions coming through here, but tell you what, if you want to continue the conversation, I encourage you to sign up for our Lose Your Gut Challenge group. Right, we have this. It's a free challenge happening this week, starting tomorrow, running throughout the next week. Right, we're having a free Lose Your Gut Challenge group. All the details are posted up on leehayward.com if you want to go check it out. Like, it explains what it is, how it works, how to register, all that stuff. But it's going down on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. And throughout that Facebook group, every single day, there's going to be live video coaching lessons in the morning. And then we're going to do kind of like a mini live video Q&A at the end of each day, kind of similar to what we're doing here now, but it's going to be geared towards the content that's covered within the Lose Your Gut Challenge group. So we'll kind of block it down. So each day we focus on one particular habit, one particular aspect of fitness and nutrition, and we build on it day after day after day. So we break it down into bite-sized chunks. And then after the 5-day challenge, you'll have all the pieces of the puzzle. And then we're going to have a graduation workshop, which is a webinar where I'm going to take all that and put it together into a step-by-step action plan that you can follow and stick with after the challenge is done. So again, if you want to follow and come on board with it, head on over to my website, leehayward.com. All the details are there. And there's still room to jump on board before we officially kick it off tomorrow morning. All right, I'm going to get ready and clue it up. Hopefully you enjoyed the video chat. I enjoyed doing it, and I look forward to chatting with you next week. Same time, same place. Have yourself a great one. Take care. Over and out. End the stream. Boom.